I don't know. I think they changed the name. I heard he got in trouble. The original guy got in trouble for calling it deprogramming. So now he calls it exit exit counseling from the cult. And what's so funny is you actually need exit counseling from the exit counselors. That's the because you realize that what they're doing is it's actually called conversion therapy. It's not deprogramming, and they're it's somebody who's deviated from the norm in some way, and then there all of this sort of unconscious collective propaganda passes as facts. And here's the thing: you'll notice there are certain words that you just feel like you can't touch them. Like everyone kind of has a feeling about these things, but you just can't touch it. And Bill Maher and Jon Stewart both, I think they were brilliant. And then they went off the rails, and then they're coming back, and they're brilliant again. And what's so great is they say those things that you can't say. Some of them, many of them. There are a lot that they can't do, though, because they're men, so they can't do the women's ones. So I try to cover those because they're these sacred cows that you can't. I mean, I think I've been explaining to you in depth my relationship with my Instagram. And, I mean, I just have to say, for the most part, I did not know people were this kind and loving and wonderful and intelligent and poetic and interesting and generous and gracious. I mean, that is, for the most part, my experience. Otherwise, I couldn't do the rest of it. But I'm just amazed. And if anybody ever on Instagram has sent me some kind, or Facebook, some kind of warm expression, sometimes I just can't even respond. I'm looking for new ways to respond other than to say I'm a little speechless right now because they're so lovely. And then we have the sacred cow posts and the sacred cow kind of, you know what it is when it's like a minefield on your Instagram. And so I dared touch the sacred cow of the narcissist. And there are certain ones that I feel particularly moved to dismantle. I feel profoundly moved to dismantle for a number of reasons. And what is so difficult to explain, maybe in the environment of Instagram, maybe I have really deep conversations on Instagram. I'm not sure that's what it was intended for, but that's okay. But because what I'm trying to say to people, that almost everything that I say is what's passing as helpful to you is actually a nail in your coffin. It's actually passive sexism occurring, and it's like like a virus that's being carried by your sisters. Your sisters were injected with this, and they're doing it. And so it's passing, as the real thing, but it's like the Borg or something. It's taking over everything. And so it's very, very difficult to see clearly through a lot of these things, because the number one thing that you do to a woman, if you want to convince her to carry your virus, is you convince her that if she doesn't, she's harmful. We are so, basically good-hearted, but often without boundaries or critical thinking. And I do want to say that is just as harmful. You do not get a pass for that. This is one of the things that I say in my messaging is, there is this assumption that, because I'm passive, I'm not accountable. No, you're equally accountable. It's like BKS Iyengar used to say, when people when they're sitting like this, are training their chests to cave in just as much as when you're sitting like this and you're deliberately holding it away. And you're going to get results either way. And so you aren't given a pass. In fact, passivity is women's version of aggression, if that makes sense. And so in our culture, we're just in a time where it's a passivity tyranny, where those folks who act passive aggressively as opposed to overtly aggressively are not are really just, wow, they spread like wildfire and took things over. I think there's a kind of correction that's happening now, but it's really important to understand that, and this is not getting through always on my Instagram, that we live in an interdependent reality. If you don't understand that, you're not going to understand much of what I say. But everything is co-created. It's dependent origination. There is nothing that arises separately. So, for example, a narcissist. A narcissist does not arise or practice or abuse in isolation. All of these expressions or phenomena are created by myriad causes, one, and they're dynamic, two. These are important things to understand, because if you don't, everything is just going to look hopeless unless you're on the right team when the right party comes into office. It's like, because I guarantee you within a year, the word narcissist is going to leave our vocabulary, because the narcissist is the word that's generated. It's the same as, let's see, narcissist would be the same as like greedy bitch. So if the masculine side said it, maybe it would be like greedy bitch. And if the lefty side said it, it would be narcissist. And so, because what narcissist says is, I am excused from the responsibility of ensuring my own well-being because that person is XYZ. It is the fundamentally rooted in, I was talking about at the very beginning of this series, the klesha of women, the primary klesha of women is being rooted in powerlessness because we are power. So it's the opposite in the realized form, right? So that fundamental sense of powerlessness is going to feel a sense of powerlessness, and then is going to assert and create reasons why. Does that make sense? So you don't get to do that. We don't get to do that. And then here's the most terrific thing about these just god awful, just this massive DSM culture that we have. That's the diagnostic. Is that you turn people into real assholes. It's like the way we say that person is a narcissist, and what they say on my Instagram is, have you seen narcissistic personality disorder? But everybody is so DSM that they just say NPD. Like it's just like, because they're so hip with the terms. And it's like, yeah, I've even been with people who have been diagnosed as that. And you know what I found? I found that they were brilliant, and they were artists, and they were people who actually fundamentally had to carry some kind of something inside of them that was extraordinary, that required more attention. And they just didn't have enough bandwidth to come up with a personality or anything else that was outward thinking. And there's a whole series of how you can look at what is reified into a diagnosis if you happen to understand, oh, it's all dynamic, it's all interrelated, and I am in the process of creating you, and you are in the process of creating me. And oh yeah, and by the way, I'm determined to teach this course next year. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I really want to teach this course just as a foundational semantics course, linguistics course on how to think, Because the other thing is and so the basic idea of semantics is how to use language internally and externally for purposes of sanity. They call it semantic sanity. And so how to have your language, your thinking, everything reflect basic sanity. What is sanity? It is the recognition that everything is interdependent. It is the recognition that everything is dynamic. And it's the recognition that everything is everything. And what I mean by that is when you call somebody a narcissist, they are likely many other things. Many other things. They might be a son, they might be a painter, they might be a gas station attendant, who knows? But when you only focus on that, I can guarantee you are making that bigger. You're making it bigger in their world, but you're unquestionably making it bigger in yours. And you have to ask yourself, this is a hard question, especially for women, because you'll notice you hear very few people. You hear some guys crying about their moms being narcissists, but you hear very few men using the term narcissist about women, but you hear a lot of women using this term about men. So you have to look at what is the payoff for doing that? What's the payoff for calling somebody that? Oh, it excuses me from agency. It excuses me from choice. And most importantly, and this is the most devastating part, it excuses me from compassion. And this is then what I would suggest. It excuses me from play. What do you mean by that, Nicole? Okay, well, I watch a lot of, when I'm not watching NDEs, near-death experience, then I'm watching former CIA agents talk about tricky talking to people things. And so there's this one guy, he does all of these things. The only thing I don't like is that he calls these people the narcissist. This is how you negotiate or talk with the narcissist, right? Which I don't like it. Nobody is a the something. That's ridiculous. The woman, the trans person, that is stupid. Anyway. So, but here's what's so interesting. What he, Rachel Regan, what he talks about is it's so interesting and fun when you learn how to communicate with this person. And fundamentally, I'm going to tell you the punchline. The punchline is really it's how you communicate with a person who's a Dakini or a Daka or somebody who's creative, who won't be tied down to anybody's expectations. This is, it's the same exact rules. Wink, wink. And those people often get called narcissists. Jung, there's a great story. One of my favorite stories of Jung is in the book Catafalque by Peter Kingsley, where people were just so furious with him because he would be so profoundly intimate. He would be love bombing them. He would be so profoundly intimate with them, where the first time ever somebody had seen into their soul and the level of connection. And then what would happen. This is the part they don't say. Well, I'll tell you what would happen. So they're profoundly, profoundly intimate. And then all of a sudden he's out of there. Like, who are you? What's going on? Now, Jung explained it. He said the energy of the daimon, the daimonic energy, the genie energy, whatever that archetypal energy that takes one person over and interacts with another, that had exited the person. Basically, the person had not learned to stay in that state for, stably in such a way that he wanted to be connected with him. He was attracted to the light. He moved wherever the light went, period. But what's so interesting is that those people, hated him and, sought revenge on him for having brought them to that level of intimacy and then disappeared. Now, they didn't say, wait a minute, I had given him this incredible light, and then I withdrew the light. And then when I withdrew the light, I began grasping and clenching, demanding his intimacy rather than showing up and merging into intimacy with him. which is what happens with when somebody turns into the narcissist. That's what's happening. Do you understand? It depends on your vantage point. If you're a person who's just permanently there in the state with the person, I can tell you, I've never met a narcissist. I've met people who've been diagnosed. Like I said, I've had relationships with them, but it is a very, very different experience. So that's number one. Number two is, so there are ways to talk to, interact, and play with this person. The CIA guy doesn't say and play with, but we will. And see, this is one of the things I want to begin to, when we do the how to think and communicate course, that's what I want to begin to talk about, because it's just a different type of communication when you have somebody who, we call it so profoundly selfish and doesn't consider anybody else. Just when somebody who's autonomous and doesn't interact with all of the social conventions that we interact with because we're people in need. They're not a person in need, so they don't have to do that. And the other thing is, I just want to say about this love bombing. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble, but I don't care, whatever. This love bombing is actually just called love. Period. It's like, oh, but here's the thing that you discover. I know this because I have discovered this myself. I'm Sicilian. We love. And then you discover, oh my gosh, most people can't take much love. It's like an arid desert. You pour some love and all of a sudden they turn to mud and you got to go because it's not kind to pour that much love on them at that point. It's actually kind to have them have what they can have, which is called a having level. That is the amount that somebody determines they deserve. And it's an unconscious sense of deserving. But if you go over somebody's having level, suddenly they start sabotaging, or interestingly, listen to this, they start grasping. So you're there, you're just loving them, love bombing them, you're just loving them. And then all of a sudden, it's more than they can have. So then all of a sudden they're like, I love you. There is this hilarious guy. He's so good. He's so funny. And he said, oh, I've heard about this experience of ghosting, that men are ghosting women. Don't ghost her. Try this. Smother her. And he did all these permutations of smothering and cuddling up to her and holding onto her and loving her and grasping her, and she was just like, get away from me. And he's like, that way you aren't responsible for it. So I thought that was really funny. But so I don't even know where I was, but I really meant whatever I was saying. I'll tell you that much. So so this guy, what he says is, the CIA guy, is listen to this. This is so shocking. This is how you deal with a narcissist, somebody with NPE, narcissistic personality disorder. When you talk to them, no matter what they're saying, even if they're guilting you by saying, oh, I guess you're going home for the weekend. It looks like I'm going to have to work here all weekend alone. That's one of the examples of a narcissistic comment in this guy's conception. In my conception, it's just somebody who's maladjusted, but okay. So that person says that, and it's really tricky. This is how you deal with the master manipulators. You figure out what they actually want. That's genuinely. I mean, that's genuinely. I just wish he would take the narcissist off of it, because it's really just how you deal with free people. That's really how you just do it. You just figure out what they actually want, what they're actually trying or angling for, what they're looking for. And so you would say, oh, okay, well, let's try to figure out a way that you don't have to be here all weekend alone. Like, that's his way that you deal with a master manipulator, which is just skillful, which is just not expecting them to permanently tend to your well-being. And if you fall prey, and this is where the people get so out of their mind, if you fall prey to their tactics, these words, Just the words themselves. Like that's why I'm gonna when I do the course, I'm gonna talk about snarl words and purr words, because you hear the word tactic and you just know who's ever doing a tactic, that person is evil and sinister, right? But here's their evil tactic. They just don't want to be alone working on the weekend. And they feel overwhelmed. That's really their scary, creepy tactic. And then and then how you break that and stop yourself from being prey is you take responsibility for your communication. You don't do anything you don't want to do ever. I mean, this is what on my comments, this is what I keep saying is, like, well, did you do anything you didn't want to do? Yes, but I was manipulated and tricked. Yeah, but you can't be tricked into not knowing. Like, you always know if you're doing something you don't want to do. Like, they can't like, I don't know, in your head and trick you. No, you know you're doing something you don't want to do. So that's up to you. See, that's what happens when you move the locus of power here. Is you have the power to not do the things that you don't want to do. So what you're blaming the narcissist for is for the fact that your sense of power is out here, not here, and that you're betraying and abandoning yourself. That unbearable, incurable sense of, oh God, like ennui that comes with abandoning oneself. The prey person is even putting that over there on the narcissist, and then the narcissist is even more narcissistic. You know why? Because they're like, that's not my responsibility. You made a choice. You did that. You betrayed yourself. How am I supposed to know what your limits are? How am I supposed to know? And this again, we're going over to that side of the no boundaries. How am I supposed to know better than you what your boundaries are in such a way that I'm then responsible for keeping your boundaries for you? Because I am supposed to have some kind of mind reading skills, and not only that, I'm supposed to be prey. I'm supposed to be at the mercy of your unspoken acquiescence at all times. That's really the demand that the prey person, I don't know what you call them, I think you should call them the NPD dependent, like codependent, the NPD dependent. And the thing is, and this is my argument about feminism, is that feminism is NPD dependent in that we are dependent on an adversary in order to have an identity, because we won't develop our own damn identity as women. We will only do it in reference to men. We will only do it, like, we are powerful because we're fighting the adversary of men, and we are subjugated because of men. I'm sorry, what I put this on my Instagram, and these women don't seem to understand. I just say, I don't want to give men that much power in either direction. What I want to give men is love and care and compassion and understanding and intimacy. That's what I want to give men. I want to give men actual power, because anybody who's given actual power evolves into who they were meant to be. And everybody evolving into who they were meant to be evolves basically into the Buddha. So that's the only way to do it, in my mind. So what we don't talk about is the NPD, it'll be NPD dependency, is what is called people pleasing. And I heard this great example. This woman was talking about the narcissism of passive aggression, which I thought was really the unspoken. And I would say that in that, by the way, this isn't in her book, this is in Nicole's book, is a fundamental sense of entitlement with a concurrent sense of powerlessness. So I'm powerless to do this for myself. You owe me this. That is the stance of that particular usual complementary. And often these people call themselves empathic or empaths. So the empath is not responsible for developing boundaries. And because they're not responsible, the narcissist takes advantage of them. No, just freaking develop some boundaries. And then when you do, and by the way, it's really hard. Boundaries, I want to say, there's this one book, it's a Christian book called Boundaries. And I used to have everyone read it. And if I worked with people, they had to read it before I'd work with them, because it's probably about 80% of all problems are not having boundaries. It's really shocking. How rudimentary the issues are, and how dramatic we make them. All of the hip diagnoses right now, narcissistic personality disorder, trauma, all of that. It's just boundaries, 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 boundaries. And so it's, if you see this book, pick it up. If if you're in any kind of pain, pick up this book. And it helps if you love Jesus, but if you don't, just read past those parts. That's what I used to say to people. And he gives a great example, and very compelling. What he says is, not having boundaries is like being an alien that lands on Earth, and you land on Earth, and you don't know about gravity, so you fall. You hurt your leg when you fall, but you've never hurt your leg before because you were in a non-gravity place, and so you don't know what this pain is. Then what happens from there, you feel something in your stomach, and you talk to somebody and they say, oh, that's hunger. So you go to a restaurant, and then you just point to something, and then they bring you a burger, and then you eat it and you walk out, and then you get hit and arrested. But you've never heard of money or anything like that. You didn't understand what any of these things were. That's what it's like not having boundaries. There's this feeling of like, I do not understand why I cannot get it right. I do not understand. I seem to miss communication with people all of the time in one direction or another. Either I'm trampling on their boundaries, or my boundaries are being trampled on, and I can't get it. And then you just learn, like, oh my God, this is just so simple. But hard to exercise. That's what I want to say. And it's hard to exercise because the detox is for real. Because when you learn, when you don't have boundaries, you change, you train everyone to violate your boundaries. And again, like BKS Iyengar says, you're literally training everyone into being a perpetrator. That's your training. That is what you are doing. And so you are causing harm by not having boundaries. It's so just shocking. Because that person, everyone is like handing them Kleenex. And you're like, do you understand that that is the most harmful person on the planet? Way more harmful than the perpetrator, because this person is training perpetrators everywhere. This is like a freaking commander of perpetrators, like a Navy SEAL trainer of perpetrators. The person with no boundaries is, and everyone's like, oh, little poor person. It's like, what are you talking about? So then that is like the I love this one too, the invisible gas that is noxious and kills. That's what that person is like. That's what the passive aggressive narcissist, or the no boundary narcissist is like, the invisible noxious gas that nobody realizes is actually killing everybody. See, world looks very different when you're free. Because when you're free from all of the existing narratives that if you want to be part of this culture, you have to engage in. And so you have to kind of become part of it. And then there are certain things that you would never say. I would never say that. I couldn't say that, right? Because you'd get your butt kicked, because that's what happens. But then, if you don't care, you just march in and you hopefully help people get free, because those narratives, those are stupid. They suck. They are suffering squared narratives, what we have now. Like in my time, we just had bulimia and anorexia. Those were the hot buzzwords of and then there were the Jordan Peterson does a good piece on this, because there are flares where all of a sudden you just see massive diagnoses of something. So it was anorexia and bulimia. And then there was this weird one where it was, I don't remember what it was. It was like black magic in nursery schools. And so it's like trauma for that. We don't know what it was. You just know that somebody has a political agenda at one point in time. And so the spotlight goes on that. They were probably trying to sell Intamin's low-fat food. And so they made this the thing. Then they made this the thing. And then, now it's autism, ADD, narcissism, and trauma. And and then you're just going to, it's like, oh, it's skyrocketing. I mean, I do think, I won't say this one. I'm just going to say this to be funny, just because it's going to press people's buttons. And but I don't actually know. How about that? I do think those vaccines make autism. Just joking. I do. I love RFK. I love him so much. People get so mad at that one thing. It's like this human being is saying, have some sunshine, have some good food, and have some exercise. And then the big pharma goes fucking bonkers about it. And so they do this smear campaign on this one little thing that they know will drive all of the people who wore masks in their cars alone crazy. And so anyway, yeah, I guess I'm just going to do a little political rant today. I was a little grumpy before I came, but I think I'm working it out. I think I'm working it out. What it is the sometimes it's just like this. It's heartbreak. I think maybe it's heartbreak to see such rigid engagement with things that cause suffering in with a built-in style of communication that is its own antibody, so there's layers of antibodies in any virus, we'll say, right? So there is, as soon as somebody communicates to me or to you in some way where the presumption is you're an idiot, that they have the virus. Or when they have that sort of smug or supercilious way of communication, or that kind of humor, that's just mean-spirited, then and you feel like you can't say anything back, then that they have the virus, and they're carrying some kind of message of suffering. And so, I see these girls, and they're just so righteous, but they're just so wrong. And I don't care for me at all. I mean, I'm going to be happy whether or not they think I'm dangerous because of how I talk about narcissism. I'm going to be fine. I really am. Because I'm a narcissist. See, it gives them so bad. But what breaks my heart is just that righteous indignation about something that's going to bring them tremendous suffering, because implicitly what they're saying is, I do not have the power to interact with anybody in my presence without abandoning myself. That's number one. Number two, I don't have the compassion to be with anybody in any condition, and it's like, it's just so baked in right now. And it's like hard baked soil. I don't ever remember it being so hard baked. So here's what we'll do. I'll do people pleasing and love, because this is the real disease. And you remember I was saying dependency is the malady of women in this time, probably forever, really. So dependency, and then, so from dependency arise, see, and this is the other thing. So from dependency, undiagnosed, uncured dependency arise all these symptoms, just like undiagnosed alcoholism. You notice you get in more car accidents. Now, the problem in our culture is that undiagnosed dependency is exalted, like wildly exalted. Exalted and publicly defended, which is so crazy. I mean, that video that I played yesterday with Liz Gilbert saying that women who get married and have children, according to every metric, are less happy. And it was these women just, and it's like, okay, maybe you want to look at that. But because in the same way, you really have to learn to talk to an alcoholic, and you have to wait for the window to say, or anybody who's in any kind of addiction, you have to wait for the window until they're in enough pain to say, hey, maybe you don't want to drink. The same thing has to happen for somebody who's in the throes of dependency. And dependency is so instinctual, and dependency and survival are so profoundly linked in women's realities that it is inconceivable. That's the important thing. But I try to put it in the context of alcoholism, because it's inconceivable to the alcoholic that they wouldn't drink. It is inconceivable to the people on My 600-Pound Life that they wouldn't eat as much as they eat. It is inconceivable, I live in Harlem, to the people who are, stooped over from spice, that they wouldn't smoke that when they're out there apparently in tremendous pain. So I just want to say, like, a lot of things that I say are inconceivable to people because they could not imagine an autonomous existence. Like, it's just not like, so then of course, if there's no way that you could humanly be autonomous, everything I'm saying is very cruel. It is, if you are perpetually dependent, you have no option but to be dependent on these people, then yes, of course you need laws to mitigate that danger. Yes, of course you need social conventions to do that. Yes, of course you need massive diagnoses to get them to stop. You have to do that if this person is dependent. But I start with the premise that you aren't. You absolutely aren't. But to move into your autonomy, you have to go through the detox. And the detox is really hard. I've been through it myself. Thank you very much. I've been a sponsor to many who have as well. It is very, very difficult. It is because not only in the same way that alcohol and partying with your friends and, having a glass of wine in Italy and all of these things get romanticized, women's dependency gets profoundly romanticized. It gets the charge, the positive charge comes in with the sickness and malady itself, and they bond in such a way that you imagine that you will never have a positive feeling again if you don't have that limerence, that dependency, that twin flame, that whatever your idea is. And I'm going to say dependency on anything, because I'm really hardcore. And when I did the podcast with a woman, and she said, to her, I was the devil at this point in the podcast. And because she couldn't understand how I could say that the women who had interacted with Harvey Weinstein could have quit their job. Like, the minute I feel violated in your presence, we will not be talking again. That will not happen. But she couldn't imagine, and we've been talking about this deployment of attention, having the strength of attention that you could deploy in the moment upon feeling violated, that you wouldn't question it. You wouldn't say to yourself, will I look like a bitch? Will I be mean? Will I be losing out on his love? No, you're going to lose out on training people to violate boundaries. That's what you're going to lose out on. But that's inconceivable. That kind of strength is inconceivable to women. And that's because we've lived in such a disabling and disabled culture that has reinforced our atrophy of our sovereignty muscle. And so it isn't just that you won't, which it is, but it's that you can't see it. So you have to, in the same way, the alcoholic has to say, okay, this sucks. this sucks enough for me to be willing to go into something that that I can't see yet. I can't imagine ever being happy again, but I got in a car crash, I lost my job, whatever. But I'm at the end of the road. And that's why when I first was working with my editor, I said, oh my God, feminism has missed the point. Feminism is recovery. It's a recovery program to really get sober from dependency and then the various expressions of it. And so one of those expressions, so you hear about these things, and this is one of the things that are, oh God, I just want to punch these people because they're so wrong-headed and they're so harmful. The people who put fawning, people-pleasing, all of these various tendencies under the category of trauma, which is something that happens to you, right? So again, the woman is put in the place because, by the way, I've never heard of a man fawning. I'm just going to be really straight, unless they're whatever. I'm not unless they're a fawner. We'll just say that, okay? So there are all of these behaviors that are identified as trauma behaviors. So I'm going to tell you what the title of, I can't believe I'm giving this talk, what the title of trauma gives you is, it gives you, what is that called when you have a free way out? It's not it's like plausible deniability, but it isn't. But it's you're given a pass because you have trauma is the presumption, right? Now, I do want to say that the people who have trauma and go and kill somebody aren't given a pass. But the people who have trauma and become the invisible noxious gas that kills everybody that way, they're given a pass because they're the passive form of trauma, and they do the fawning, they do the dependency, they do the self-abandonment, they do those things. No, that isn't trauma. That is called addiction. And the reason that I put it in the category of addiction is that in addiction, you have the possibility of stepping outside of a paradigm of a life sentence into something that you can, if you apply agency, can transform. And, and I happen to believe, now this is me, I happen to believe that addiction is the most powerful drive in the human body, and that if you actually learn to work with it, it is the road to enlightenment. That if you can unplug your addiction from the material world and plug it into vision, you're good. Now, the unplugging part, a little bit difficult. The replugging in, a little bit difficult. The not unplugging it and trying to plug it back into the material, difficult. It's all difficult, but it is simple. Accelerated, massively accelerated, rather than the slow going way that most people go. So I don't like or trust or really like to interact much with people who aren't addicts or haven't been. So because I think they're boring. I mean, they're just pokey people who. I'm just joking. I mean, I'm not really. But that's also because I think so many people are undiagnosed addicts and primarily undiagnosed dependency addicts is what I think of women. So one of the expressions of dependency is people pleasing, or this fawning. And this woman posted this. I'm sorry, I don't have her name. I'll try to find it because I like to give credit, but I thought it was very good. When a loved one hurts your feelings and you don't address it out of fear of having an awkward conversation, but in silence, your hurt grows into a giant festering resentment, that's not love. it's people pleasing. When you're being generous with your time or emotional energy and smiling on the outside, but seething with resentment, frustration, or anger on the inside, that's not kind. It's people pleasing. When you're staying silent about your frustrations in a relationship to create harmony, but venting constantly about those frustrations to everyone but the person in question, that's not kind. It's people pleasing. When someone asks you a favor and you agree out of obligation and guilt, but then silently resent them with the whole time you're doing the favor, that's not kind. It's people pleasing. And so this is what I want to say, because see, every one of those are something that the person would have to do with the narcissist in order to feel that they were harmed at the end of it. See, if you don't do any of that shit, you don't feel harmed. You're just like, somebody tries to pull that with me. And some people are interesting enough to put up with it, if that makes sense. Like, there are, definitely the geniuses I know in the world are not, they're maladapted, let's be honest, because everything is going to whatever that form is. I mean, not right now, he's controversial, but look at Elon Musk dancing, and you're like, no attention whatsoever went to learning how to dance. It just didn't. Or you look at these, these people, and you're like, okay, I understand, but it went somewhere else. And one of my favorite commentators right now is Brett Weinstein, and he has a brother, Eric Weinstein, who's also superb. They're, geez, really balanced thinkers in our time. And Eric Weinstein did a brilliant post one time where he talked about the fact that, Lamborghinis are loud and noxious and obnoxious, and you're driving and they're, they hurt the eyes, and you don't want, you want a few Lamborghinis on the road. Makes the road more interesting. You don't want every car to be a Lamborghini, but you also don't want every car to be a Volkswagen, right? And he was likening this to the fact that we were taking all of the geniuses out. It was like it was a genius sniper time since about 2015 to recently. And there's a whole way of taking those people out. And then what Brett says is super great. Maybe I'll start with this one tomorrow. It's so good. I may have played it before because I'm so impressed, but he talks about the fact that those people were all taken out. But he said, I would bet on that army now, because that army can take out the Goliath of, big government that's kind of blind and just moving like this. And at first they were taken out, and you thought they'd be taken out permanently, but now they're an army in and of it themselves. I'll see if I can play it. If not, I'll put it up, and anybody who wants it can have it, because it's so bright. And one of the best things about Brett, other than his very sophisticated thinking, is that he's one of the few calm commentators. Because and has a sense of humor, because right now everyone, although I will say Joe Rogan's pretty calm. I mean, dude, but he's calm, and so he doesn't inject a lot of himself. He was a professor, and he was a professor, and during the time of cancellation, he was one of the early cancellations. I think it was for not protecting a safe space for people of color in his university. Oh no, it was all Black day, and he refused to not come to school. White people weren't allowed to go to school, and he refused. And he had a really good argument, which is the argument that most free people have. It isn't that I don't respect you, it's that I won't be compelled to do anything. And because I don't think any human being should ever be compelled. Why? Not because I don't think people should be compelled, because I don't think people can be compelled. And I think when people are compelled for a period of time, they're just people pleasing, and then they come back with guns. And so I think that you ought to understand at the beginning, Either there is somebody who refuses to be compelled, or there is somebody who refuses to be compelled for now. And so build your laws in your world accordingly. So, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I made it through that, because that was actually it's a fairly complex reversal that you have to do in order to, it's so hard to see that things that are called harmful are actually salvation, and the things that are called salvation are actually the harmful thing in such a time. See, I've been an activist for a long time. I've never seen it like this, where the immune system of the harmful sides and sides, I don't, harmful things, is so strong, so that the immune response can just knock people out, and you're like, but you're wrong. But it's very, very effective, and that makes it daunting until you get so free that you don't care. You just don't. It's like, I have immunity at this point. What is it when you have? Although this didn't really happen. Although they promised you that it would. If you had COVID, you wouldn't get COVID again, or if you had the vaccine, you wouldn't get COVID. But I have immunity. That's what I'm going to say. and so that's the hope, right? But apparently, you have to get the disease enough times that you can't get it again. So I'll do just a really quick one because I don't have much time. Lori asks, can you define how you define power, and how do women have more power? And I think I answered this the other day. That's why I can do this one really quickly. So power is the ability to uplift, and very similar to inspire. In my mind, it's a radiation. It's a radiance that comes from one. And that radiance is very similar to the force of gravity that influences everything around it. That's the idea. And so but it would be like the positive version of the invisible gas, because it's the positive, invisible upliftment for all. And as I said, if you give people genuine power, then what happens is they evolve into who they are. And see, that's why I hate, what is that? Power corrupts. No, power has never corrupted anything ever in the history. It couldn't. That's like saying flower is corrupt. It just doesn't. What forces the bud of the flower open corrupts. That's insanity. No, corruption corrupts, and it'll never stop doing that until you give it power. And power evolves. Power evolves people. And so when you are able to have a sustained attention, which is another sign of power, then you can apply your attention to others. That application of attention transmits a power that evolves whatever it is around you. And it could be systems, like I'm interested in evolving the system of incarceration from prisons to monasteries. That's one of my personal applications of my power. And so it's a very different act. And the thing about it is that it's not fancy. It's not like this kind of power isn't the kind you can't reach for it or grasp for it. You're just happy as a result of having it. And so it really is. That's why we own. We own because exchanges in this form of power, and this dynamic, process-oriented expansion of magnetism and radiance. That's what it does. And the other kind of sexual activity locks on. So it takes what's fixed and makes it volatile and alive so that it can evolve, because all things self-liberate. The other kind fixates on the goal of climax. And then when a whole set of horrible things happen when you do that, Not the least of which is that you bypass every moment and all sensitivity in order to get to a personal drive, in order to explode and expel all of your power and energy. So that's how I look at it. So when you say a woman's type of power, that's a woman's type of power right there. Is and it's, you know, the first time I really witnessed it. I mean, I'm sure I witnessed it as a girl, but first time I really witnessed it was in a demonstration of a woman in orgasm, when I understood this woman is doing nothing but radiating and magnetizing, getting as vulnerable and as deep as she can possibly get with no agenda whatsoever. And all of us are wrapped. All of us. We can't look away. We can't do anything. We're all moved, we're all changed in her presence. And I thought that's the kind of power I want to have. That's what I want to explore. Okay, that's good for today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll take some reflections from online. You can raise your virtual hand. We will start with Lorraine.
I loved your very sobering view of passive aggression and dependency, and it really puts a really humane perspective on that. The people, you know, narcissists and people who are dependent, and so thank you for that.
Oh, deeply. Thank you for receiving. I can feel you received it, and I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
We'll go to Kelly.
Hi, Nicole. I've really really been enjoying all of these talks, and today like just hit home on so many points, because as you're talking, I can see like that behavior in myself in the past. I can see where I've noticed it and have pivoted. I can see like when you use the term detox, I was like, that I'm in the middle of detox. and so it's, you don't have to totally answer this right now because I know we're out of time, but I kind of like wonder, and it makes me kind of think, like, is detoxing like a forever process, or like as it starts, does it just start to like domino effect? Which, as I say that, I'm kind of answering my own question. I'm seeing a lot of domino effects, so I guess I'm kind of like questioning how rapid it is in a way, but not questioning like in a bad way, more like just inviting it. And yeah, it feels really good to be able to name the conditionings too.
You're so fun. You're so great. And thank you for your interaction on Instagram. Sometimes you can tell it gets a little heavy in there for me, and you're in there with like, I appreciate it. And then I do have I'll give a quick answer, and that is detox is activated at some point in your life. And then once it's activated, you have to deliberately do something to stop it. And one of my favorite expressions is, don't pray for the return of anything that God removed, which I think is so good. And then the next is, yes, there are ways to abet it, to accelerate it. And then the last is, you know, in Tibetan Buddhism, 8th, 9th, 10th level bodhisattva are the levels where you never go back. You never go back. And then the promise is that all karma is exhausted, and then there is no more detoxing. There is just joy, and you realize you've been in joy all along.
And we'll end with Sarah Ronnie.
Hi. So when you were talking about the narcissist, of course, it had me reflect on my own relationship with a narcissist, you know, a decade plus ago. And I was kind of pondering it, and I was like, yes, I definitely take responsibility for getting suckered back in, knowing what the pattern was going to be, because the sex was so good. So I kept kind of hoping it might be different each time. And what finally got me out of that loop, which took many years actually, what finally got me out of that loop, it wasn't like willpower or like intellectual knowing. It was really my own power expanding
That's good.
which was actually being part of the OM community, starting to OM, being part of that, and then my own power expanding. And by the
Brilliant.
time he sent his final text to me, like I wasn't even tempted to respond. I had no emotional response. I was just like, this is not interesting to me anymore.
Brilliant.
And that was that.
Brilliant. That is, oh, I hope that you write that and do your art around it so that other women can hear that and know that possibility. Because you're exactly what you're saying is until you develop your own power, drama is interesting. And then as you develop it, it naturally falls off. That's how you heal yourself and the narcissist, because you stop feeding them for that behavior. It's superb insight.
I'll do a post on it.
Good, good. I'm glad. All right. We'll see you. What's tomorrow? Am I tomorrow?
Tuesday.
We'll see you tomorrow.